Hello everyone, I'm here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now, get comfortable and relax. This horror tale is called The Cabin at Black Hollow Road. The rain had started as a whisper, a soft tapping against the windshield that barely warranted the flick of the wipers. But now it was relentless, thick sheets of water lashing against the car with such force that the road itself seemed to vanish under it. Headlights barely pierced the gloom ahead. The trees loomed on either side of the narrow, winding road, their skeletal branches thrashing in the wind. Daniel Hart gripped the steering wheel tighter, squinting into the deluge. He cursed under his breath. The GPS had stopped working an hour ago, leaving him stranded in an unfamiliar stretch of countryside. Somewhere off the main highway, in the middle of the dense Corage forest, he'd taken a wrong turn. Now he was here alone, surrounded by nothing but black pines, twisting dirt roads, and a storm that showed no sign of letting up. His phone was useless, no signal, no data. Dead pixels flickered weakly across the screen every time he tried to refresh the map. "Great," he muttered, glancing at the gas gauge. Below a quarter. The storm had knocked out most of the small roadside towns he'd passed. Every gas station had been shuttered, their lights dark, their pumps taped off with plastic sheeting. Then, as if cued by some unseen force, the dashboard lights began to flicker. A sharp, metallic grinding echoed from under the hood. No, come on. Daniel's foot pressed uselessly on the gas. The engine gave one last shudder and died. The car coasted for a few yards before stalling completely, leaving him stranded in the middle of the road, swallowed by darkness and rain. He sat there in stunned silence, listening to the wind howl outside, his breath fogging the cold glass. No cars passed, no lights in the distance, nothing but the rhythmic drumming of rain on the roof. For a long moment, Daniel just sat there, watching the storm smear the windshield into a blurry gray canvas. He considered waiting it out, but the chill creeping into the car, and the realization that he hadn't seen another soul in miles, pushed him to act. Pulling on his jacket, he grabbed a flashlight from the glove compartment. He glanced around the car once more, as if expecting someone to appear in the passenger seat to tell him this was a bad idea. Then he stepped out into the storm. The rain was colder than it had looked, icy needles slicing into his skin, soaking him instantly. He pulled his hood low and began walking, flashlight cutting a pale beam through the rain. He didn't have a plan. He simply moved forward, the road narrowing even more as it twisted deeper into the woods. Then, through the hiss of rain and wind, he saw it, a faint glow ahead, orange and steady, like candlelight. He quickened his pace, boots slipping in the mud. As he drew closer, the shape of a wooden gate emerged from the storm. Beyond it, set back in a clearing surrounded by ancient trees, was a small cabin. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, defying the wind. And there, standing by the gate, was a figure holding an old oil lantern. An old woman, wrapped in a thick shawl, her face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. Daniel's heart pounded, not just from relief, but something else, something harder to name. Still, he needed help. He approached slowly, raising a hand in greeting. "Excuse me. Sorry, my car broke down just up the road. I don't have a signal in." "You are soaked through," the woman interrupted, her voice calm and even. "Come inside, child. This storm won't pass till morning." Her words were firm, not unkind, but there was no question that she expected him to obey. She opened the gate with surprising ease for a frail appearance, beckoning him toward the warm glow of the cabin. Everything in Daniel's mind screamed at him to hesitate, but the cold, the wet, the exhaustion, they pushed him forward. The cabin door creaked open, releasing a wave of warmth and the scent of burning wood and herbs. Daniel stepped inside, dripping onto the worn wooden floor. It was cozy, too cozy somehow. The walls were lined with shelves of jars and dried flowers. A fire crackled in the stone hearth. Quilts and cushions were neatly arranged on armchairs and a wide wooden bench. "You'll catch your death like that," the woman said. She had already vanished into another room, returning with a thick, old towel and a steaming mug. "Dry off, drink this. I'll hang your coat." "Thank you," Daniel muttered, accepting both with shaky hands. The tea, or whatever it was, tasted strange. Sweet, but with an earthy, bitter note beneath it. It warmed him instantly, his limbs growing heavy. "I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't seen your light," he said, glancing at the window where the storm raged on. "Few people take this road anymore," she replied, her voice carrying from the kitchen. "And fewer still when the storm comes. Is there any chance I could call for a tow or something? My phone's dead." "No signal here," she said simply. "Storm's knocked it all out. Lines have been down since before sundown. Nothing moves in this weather. Not cars, not phones, not even birds." Her words sent a small shiver down Daniel's spine. "Rest by the fire," she continued. "You'll stay the night. It's not safe to wander out again." Daniel wanted to argue, but already the warmth and the strange tea were tugging at his mind. His eyelids drooped, heavy with exhaustion. The last thing he saw before sleep claimed him was the woman's face, partially obscured by shadow. She was smiling, but her eyes were wrong. Too bright, too sharp. Daniel wasn't sure what woke him. At first, everything was a blur. Warmth, darkness, the crackling of the fire. Then he heard it, a faint sound, somewhere beneath the wind and rain. A voice. It was soft, almost like the wind itself had begun to speak through the cracks in the walls. He sat up, blinking away the fog in his head. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows that danced across the floor and ceiling. His mouth was dry, and his skin felt too hot under the blanket someone had draped over him. The old woman was nowhere in sight. The whispering came again. Faint, female. Daniel's heart thudded. He stood slowly, the wooden floorboards groaning under his weight. The entire cabin seemed to shift with every step he took, like it was breathing beneath him. He followed the sound, flashlight in hand, moving toward a narrow hallway at the back of the house. The whispers grew louder, words he couldn't quite catch. The hallway was lined with old, warped portraits, faces half-faded, their features distorted by time and water damage, eyes that seemed to follow him as he passed. The last door on the right was slightly ajar. The voice was coming from inside. Daniel hesitated, every instinct screaming to turn back, but something stronger pulled him forward. He pushed the door open. Inside was a small room, cluttered with shelves of jars and dried herbs. Candles burned on every surface, their flames unmoving despite the draft in the air. And at the center of the room was an old wooden table. Upon it lay an open book, thick, bound in cracked leather, its pages covered in strange symbols and hand-drawn diagrams. The whispers stopped the moment he stepped inside. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as he approached the table. He couldn't read the writing. It wasn't any language he recognized, but the drawings chilled him to the bone. Crude sketches of people surrounded by dark shapes, their faces twisted in agony. Something shifted behind him. He spun around. The old woman stood in the doorway, watching him with that same placid smile. "You shouldn't be in here," she said softly. Her voice was different now, lower, rougher, like two voices speaking at once. Daniel stumbled back, heart pounding. What was this place? Her smile widened, somewhere people only find when they're meant to. She stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind her without her touching it. Daniel's breath came fast and shallow. He backed toward the window, but the shutters outside were bolted tight, the glass too thick to break. I need to leave," he stammered. "I'll walk back to my car." "No car waits for you now," she replied, calm as ever. "You were brought here." The room seemed to shrink around him, the walls bending inward. "You've been marked, child. This house calls those who wander too far from their path." She moved toward him, slow, deliberate, as if savoring his terror. "You drank the tea," she continued. "You sat by the fire. You let the house in." Daniel's limbs felt sluggish, his skin prickling with a numbing cold. "What would he want?" he choked out. The old woman's face began to change. Slowly, the soft lines of age melted away, revealing something far older beneath, something hollow-eyed and sharp-toothed, its skin like cracked porcelain stretched over bone. Her smile never wavered. "We want nothing," she whispered. "We only take." Daniel turned and ran, stumbling out of the room and down the hallway. The wall seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of him, no longer the simple, cozy cabin he'd entered. Doors lined either side now, all of them shut tight. Behind him, footsteps followed, soft and steady. No matter how fast he ran, the cabin seemed to grow, expanding into an endless maze of narrow corridors and steep staircases. He burst into a new room, massive, lined with dozens of beds. Beds identical to the ones he'd seen in the strange room before. And in each bed, a figure lay sleeping, faces eerily peaceful, their skin pale and waxy. Daniel's mind reeled. He stumbled backward, his hands trembling. Every face looked familiar. They were all him, dozens of versions of himself, all in different clothes, different states of decay, but all unmistakably Daniel. He fell to his knees, retching. Behind him, the old woman's voice returned, calm, patient, inescapable. "They always think they're the first." Daniel's legs refused to move. The faces in the beds, his faces, stared up at the low ceiling with blank, glassy eyes. Some looked exactly like him as he'd been hours ago. Others looked older, as if they'd been here for years, skin shriveled and gray, their hair bleached white. The room smelled of lavender and something metallic beneath it. Behind him, the old woman was still coming. He staggered to his feet and stumbled toward the far door, his breath ragged. His fingers fumbled at the knob. It was locked tight. The footsteps grew closer. Desperate, Daniel grabbed a wooden chair from beside one of the beds and swung it at the window. The glass didn't shatter. Instead, it rippled like thick oil, absorbing the blow. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing slow and steady. "You can't break what isn't meant to be broken." The woman's voice cooed from somewhere behind him, now disembodied, echoing through the very wood of the house. Daniel's chest burned. He spun around, heart slamming in his ears, ready to face her, but she was gone. The room was empty again, except for him and the dozens of sleeping selves that wore his face. Something on the far wall caught his eye. A small writing desk, almost hidden between two beds. Upon it sat a thin, leather-bound journal, its edges worn and curling. With trembling hands, Daniel opened it. The handwriting was neat and small, as though the writer had been afraid of taking up too much space. If you found this, it means you are already part of the house. You won't leave, but you deserve to know what it is that holds you here. The woman is not what she seems. She is older than the trees outside, older than the stones beneath the earth. She was here before this land was ever settled. Some call her the Keeper. Others call her the Hollow Mother. She watches the roads, waiting for those who wander too far. She invites them in, feeds them warmth and comfort, and once they've accepted her gifts, the tea, the fire, they are bound to her forever. You cannot break her contract. You can only obey. I have been here I've lost count of the years. Time does not move inside these walls the way it does outside. I dream of myself walking out the door, but every time I wake, I am still here. The next line was scribbled in frantic, shaky letters. She will take your body next. You will walk these woods to lure others, just like I did. Daniel's hands were shaking so violently the journal slipped from his grasp and fell to the floor with a soft thud. Suddenly, the door behind him unlocked with a loud click. Daniel spun around, heart pounding. The door creaked open slowly. Beyond it was a staircase, leading downward into thick darkness. And at the bottom of the stairs, a voice called up to him. "You've read enough now, child," it said gently. "Come, it's time we spoke properly." Daniel's breath caught in his throat, but the pull was irresistible. He descended. The steps creaked under his weight, the air growing colder with every step. The darkness seemed alive, thick and swirling, pressing against his skin. At the bottom was a vast room, carved into the earth itself, its walls pulsing with faint, amber light like the inside of some great living creature. And at the center, seated in a high-backed wooden chair carved with strange symbols, was the old woman, her true form now revealed. Her face was a shifting mask, sometimes old, sometimes young, sometimes inhuman altogether. Her eyes burned with cold fire. "You've done well to last this long," she said, her voice echoing off the walls. "Most succumb before they find the journal." Daniel couldn't speak. His mouth was dry, his legs locked in place. "But there's a choice before you," she continued, her many faces watching him from every shadow. "You can join the house willingly. Walk these woods for me. Find others like yourself. Bring them here." Her smile was slow, patient. "Or you can refuse." She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "And then you will become part of its walls." Behind her, the shapes in the walls became clear. Faces, dozens of them, frozen mid-scream, their mouths wide and eyes bulging, trapped forever in the pulsing stone. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. "Choose, child," she whispered. Daniel's mind raced. There had to be a way out, but every instinct told him the house wouldn't allow it. Still, something in her words struck him. She needed him willing. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice to work. "If I agree, I'm free to leave." The old woman's many faces smiled as one. "You'll walk the woods. You'll breathe the storm. But yes, your body will be your own." "For how long?" Daniel's voice was hollow. "As long as you bring others," she replied sweetly. He realized then, this was why his car had broken down, why there had been no signal, why everything had led him here. Every traveler who'd accepted her bargain had done the same. Lured more, fed the house. Daniel closed his eyes, and he chose. Daniel stood, staring into the creature's many eyes, her faces shimmering like water, shifting between familiar and monstrous. Behind her, the walls still pulsed with trapped souls, their eyes wide and unblinking, mouths stretched into eternal screams. He thought of those faces. He thought of himself lying in those beds upstairs, his body pale and still. But above all, he thought of the road. of his life before this. The long stretches of pavement beneath bright skies, the freedom of movement, the taste of cold air outside the window. The house had taken all of that from him, but it was offering it back at a cost. His voice trembled as he spoke, but there was no hesitation in his words. "I choose to walk," he said. The words left his mouth like ice, heavy and sharp. The old woman's many faces beamed with satisfaction. "So wise," she purred, "so willing." The walls seemed to sigh in approval, a long exhale that stirred the air around him. She extended her hand, long, thin, with fingers that seemed to stretch beyond the limits of her skin. Daniel didn't want to take it, but he did. The moment their hands touched, a burning cold surged through his arm, racing through every nerve, every vein, every thought. He cried out, but the sound was swallowed by the house itself. His body seized as the coldness rooted itself inside him. His bones ached, his skin crawled. Then, the pain softened into something else. Stillness, clarity. A strange calm filled his chest, spreading outward. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the underground chamber. He was standing in the woods again, beneath the weeping storm. But everything was different. The rain no longer chilled him. The cold had no teeth now. It was part of him. His body moved on its own, steady and sure, walking the darkened path through the woods. He didn't need the flashlight anymore. His eyes saw clearly in the dark. And ahead, through the curtain of rain, he saw headlights. A car, stranded. Its hood lifted, steam rising from the engine. Inside, a figure sat in the driver's seat, looking at their dead phone, panic creeping into their features. Daniel's new heartbeat was slow, steady. The house had shown him everything in a breath, the ritual, the method. He walked toward the car, steps quiet as snowfall. The driver, a young woman, drenched in sweat, looked up with wide eyes as he tapped on her window. She rolled it down halfway, her voice tight with nerves. "Oh, thank God. Do you live around here? My car just stopped, and there's no service." Daniel smiled, the same calm, patient smile the old woman had given him. "There's a cabin just ahead," he said softly, his voice warm and inviting. "You'll be safe there for the night." Her eyes lit with desperate hope. "Really? That'd be amazing. I didn't know anyone even lived out here." Daniel nodded, stepping back. "Follow me," he said, turning toward the hidden path. Behind him, he heard the car door open and footsteps splash through the mud as the woman followed him, clutching her coat tightly. The storm roared on, louder now, as if applauding. As Daniel led her through the trees, the cabin slowly appeared through the veil of rain, its windows glowing warmly, smoke curling from the chimney. It looked so inviting, so harmless. He paused at the gate, watching her approach. Her face was filled with relief, her guard lowered completely. He smiled again, feeling the house's pulse deep beneath his feet. "You will be safe here," he repeated. She looked at him, grateful and oblivious. Daniel pushed open the gate. The door swung wide by itself, candlelight spilling out into the storm. And from within, a voice, soft, maternal, familiar, called out, "Come inside, child. The storm won't pass till morning." The young woman hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. Daniel remained at the gate, watching. He didn't need to follow. His part was done. He turned, walking back into the trees. Somewhere in the distance, beyond the storm, another road waited, and beyond that, another traveler. The cabin still waits at the edge of Croridge Forest. The storm still comes, just as it always has. The old woman's eyes still burn behind the curtains, waiting for the next soul to wander too far from their path. And on certain nights, when the fog is thickest and the rain refuses to stop, you might see him, A figure in the woods. Calm, steady, smiling, offering shelter. Just follow him. He'll show you the way.